Hello, gang. This is Scott Reitz, International Tactical Training Seminars. There is a reason why police officers that work in cities should never venture outside their lane. And the following story I'm about to tell you might take a little bit of time, but it is absolutely hysterical. And I was involved in this. It was the late 1980s, and there were a plethora, or was a plethora, of phencyclidine and what we call angel dust, juice, which was being manufactured throughout Los Angeles, and the fumes from the precursors into this were very, very strong. So if people tried to build and basically, brew their own PCP, neighbors would find out pretty quickly, call the police would come. Well, suspects, gang members precisely, became very enterprising, and they decided, well, we're going to go somewhere else, which was the middle of the Mojave Desert. And if I remember correctly, it was Administrative Narcotics. Jimmy Welch, if I'm not mistaken, was the lead detective on it. And they came up with a group of people who were going to go out into the middle of the Mojave Desert, and they were going to brew the PCP with all the precursors. They're going to get it from San Diego, San Francisco, Sacramento. And they were going to meet at the dead of night, 00 dark 30 hours, and they were going to go ahead and brew this stuff and then package it up, put it in big drums, and bring it back down to LA and sell it. Okay, no problem. This ended up going over to SWAT because they figured admin narc is not going to be able to do this. So SWAT got involved, and this was an on-again, off-again caper for about, if I'm not mistaken, about a year and a half. And they call us, hey, it looks like it's going to go, looks like these guys are going to go out there, admin narc is surveilling them, looks like they got all the precursors, they're going to go out to the Mojave, blah, blah, blah. And we'd stand up, and then we stand down. Stand up, stand down. It was what we used to call in the old days, on the bus, off the bus. And finally, one day, it certainly came to fruition. And it was a 00, very early in the morning roll call. And they said, looks like this thing's going to go. Now, you got a bunch of SWAT cops. They are used to street signs and paved streets and, restaurants and everything else. And this was out in the middle of nowhere, literally. So we get the debriefing, and everybody loads up. We have V100s, which I think have been trucked out there on a flatbed prior to our getting out there. And I have no idea to this day where in the Mojave Desert we were, but it was in the middle of nowhere. And everybody gets together. We have Suburbans. We've got everybody's suited up and everything else, kitted up. And we head out. And it was still dark, I think, when we left. And we start driving and driving and driving, and it's just going on forever. And hours later, we arrive out at a town. I have no idea what the town is to this day. Somebody hopefully knows and will email me to let me know. The V100s, we had two V100s, which were armored personnel carriers that had been given to us by Department of Energy. They were painted blue, had LAPD rescue vehicle on the side, if I'm not mistaken. Why we had those out there, I don't know, but we had them out. And we staged everything, including an air unit. I think definitely one, possibly two LAPD support, air support, we'll call ASD Air Support Division. Air units were out there also. And they had staged those at a power plant facility, which was adjacent to the small town where we were going to stage. So we get there, and the V100s are there, the air units there. Nice. So we get there, and with the V100s are staged, the air units are staged, and we get the final briefing, and then everybody shotguns out. And we're in the Suburbans, and there must have been 30 or 40 of us, I don't know, a lot of guys. And there were four of us in my Suburban. B.R. Hoover was driving mine. He was an old-time SWAT cop, very, very funny guy. I mean, the guy just had the driest sense of humor. And it becomes kind of funny, the reason I'm bringing him up. And I'm passenger, he's driver. We got two other guys. I have no idea who the D-teamers were who were in the back seat. And everybody brought, we brought food, supposedly, drinks and everything else. We figured this is going to be a, no-brainer caper. And we get out there and we drive out, and as soon as it gets dark, everybody drives out. Well, my personal pre-designated area was to be in the Suburban. We were going to be under a railroad trestle in the Mojave. And the Suburban just barely fit underneath this thing. And at the same time, we had snipers pre-positioned. Now, the thing that always amazed me is when we went to the site where the suspects, there was supposed to be a bunch of suspects coming. And I mean, they were going to be armed. If anybody came up, they were going to confront them. There was to be a massive shootout. It was going to be just hellacious. Well, that didn't exactly come to fruition. But what these morons had done is in the middle of the Mojave Desert, I mean, there's literally nothing around. There are rattlesnakes, jackrabbits, coyotes, and just scrub brush. And that's it. That's all there is. But in the middle of it, they have about a 20 by 20 foot area, which has been basically not roped off, but it's been fenced off with galvanized fencing. I mean, it's a 3-foot fence. It's in the middle of nowhere. What's the point? I don't know. We had snipers that had gotten into position, and the snipers had gotten into position in conjunction with the detectives, and the detectives knew when the precursors came together, they had to wait until the precursors came together, if I'm not mistaken, to make the PCP, and then you had a violation. So the snipers are there. There was a couple of guys from Admin Narc, and they're sitting there watching from binos, and now it's already been dark for many, many hours. And I'm sitting there in the Suburban, and everybody brought a lunch, period, which was not sufficient because if you know D-teamers, everybody works out, they're big guys, everybody's in shape, and people who went through, I mean, food like right away within the first hour, and we still have many, unbeknownst to us, we had many, many hours to go. So the food was gone right away. Water and everything else, that was gone right away, and everybody's now, you know, just kind of upset and everything else disgruntled, so we're waiting. And waiting and waiting, and of course, you know, you're sitting there telling old D-team stories and joking, some guys are falling asleep, and it's just, you know, again, just waiting and waiting. Surveillance is like that. And about 1:30, between I think it was 1:30 and 2 in the morning, for some reason I turn over and I look at B.R. Hoover, and he had a pair of goggles on, and why, I don't know, but he's laying back, he got a mouth open sleeping, he's got a pair of goggles on, and I'm looking at him just for a second, and all of a sudden inside his goggles I'd see these two little lines going up, and then they arc over and they come down, and there's this bright light. Well, some of our guys we had received from the SEALs some pop-up flares, military pop-up flares, and these things you'd slam on your leg, and these things would shoot up, and they were what we call pop-up illumination. Well, that was our signal to move in, which we did, and we were about a mile out. And so when I see these little flares go up, because none of our comms were working at that time, I mean, just absolutely dead comms. And somebody at roll call had said, you know, if we're going out in the desert, we should have maybe canine and also bring some horses. And one of our sergeants said, no, we don't need that. We're going to get these guys. Where are they going to go in the desert? So remember that as I'm going through this. So I see these little tiny lines going up. I realize they're a pop-up flare. They BR, man, we got to go. So fire it up, and now we're heading toward the location. And we come out from underneath, and we're driving, we're bumping all over the place, slamming all over, we're hitting ravines and ditches and everything else. And these are cops, city cops that are used to paved streets. The Mojave Desert is not a paved street. To make a long story short, one of the V100s got stuck. I think the other one broke an axle, so that was out of commission. We finally pull up to where this area is. There's an old Cadillac, I think it was a convertible if I'm not mistaken. All the tires were flattened because the snipers, their job was to flatten the tires so these guys, whoever the suspects were, could run, you know, could basically not drive away. Well, the interesting thing is there weren't a dozen suspects. There weren't 24 suspects. There weren't 5 or 6. There were 2 guys. When those first shots went off from the snipers to deflate, and basically there's a technique we use, and all 4 tires are flat right away. The pop-up flare had gone illume for, you know, from narcotics, AdNarc. And these guys just took off. I think one of them left their shoes. They ran so fast, they had like bedroom slippers on and took off. So now the search is on for the suspects. And everybody is all over the Mojave. I mean, in every single direction you can imagine. You can't hear anybody. Simplex doesn't work. There are no repeaters. So we're just driving, looking for anybody that's running around. The air unit's called in, and the air unit has FLIR, forward-looking infrared. It can go white hot, black hot. And when you click on the FLIR, it'll show body. You know, you'll see this sometimes on the in TV news shows when they're going after a suspect. There he is. He's under the bush and so forth. The problem is this: every single bush in the Mojave gathers heat. When they kicked on the FLIR, every single bush was white. Every one. Millions of bushes are white. There's no way you can distinguish between the suspect and the bush. And they go, we're basically dead in the water. They can't find anything. We have no horses, no canine. So we're driving and driving for hours and hours. We're going all over. We have no idea where we are. There are literally no lights anywhere in the horizon at all 360 degrees. Sun's starting to come up. This has been about 5-6 hours later. And we come across an old, it looked like the kind of military Quonset hut you'd have, and it's kind of rusted. And we come across this, and inside is a biplane. And it's this old red biplane. It's all, it's just chewed up all to hell and gone. And this guy comes out, and BR goes, Scotty, go talk to him. So I get out. I got my SWAT gear on. It's got Los Angeles Police Department over here on my left side. And I walk up, and this is an old timer, probably in his 70s. He's got a beech nut hat on, tobacco hat on. It's stained with oil, diesel oil and motor oil and everything else, engine oil. He's got about 2 teeth. He's chewing tobacco, stained beard and everything else. He looks at me, goes, "You lost, boy?" And I mean, I don't know where this guy came from. He's in the middle of nowhere with his Quonset hut in the middle of nowhere. And I said, yeah, Los Angeles Police Department. He goes, "What you boys doing out here?" I said, so I explained the situation. He goes, "Well, I got an idea. I can put you on that biplane. You hang on to that strut there. We'll fly around. We can find that guy, and you can shoot him." When you're a young officer, you think, okay, when I retire, the one thing I would love to have on my retirement poster is on a biplane, hanging on and shooting from it at a bad guy. But discretion being the better part of valor, I said, no, I'm fine. I think I'm good. And this guy was dead serious. He said, no, I'll take you up there. We can fly. I can go real slow. Probably won't crash. But man, if you hang on that strut, you got your little shotgun there you got with you, we'll fly right over them. And man, you can take them right there. No problem. I'm going, oh, well, thank you very much, sir, blah, blah, blah. So we take off. Again, not to make a long story short, this is already long enough, but we keep going and going, and it was about 11 or 12, 1 in the afternoon, and finally they called the whole thing off. And everybody is just kind of shotgunning back to Los Angeles. Well, what happened is this. These 2 suspects, I don't know how many miles they went without shoes on, but obviously fear is a great motivator, and they crossed many, many miles of the Mojave through the night, early morning, through the day. And apparently in Victorville, there was a female deputy who was a reservist, and she's driving her police car, minding her own business, and these 2 guys come out of the desert, wave her down, and say, "You got us," because they're dehydrated, they're hungry, they're all chewed up to hell and gone. And so she gets out of the car and goes, well, why? And they go, "Just take us in." So she puts them in the back seat of her black and white, drives them down to, I think it was Victorville Police Station. Of course, the phone calls are made. D-Team comes back out. We're going to get them. And the really beautiful thing about this was she ended up sending a Polaroid photo of herself to D-Team. And it said, and she's, just absolute sweetheart. She's this one girl by herself. You got 40 SWAT cops armed to the teeth. We got all these assets and everything else. She did driving around, minding her own business. She's a reservist. And, it's just a little sweet thing. And she sends this Polaroid photo. I don't know who has it to this day. And it says, "Dear D-Team SWAT, if you ever need help, please call me. Love, so-and-so." And that was it. And initially it was called Desert Duster, the operation, and it ended up being called Desert Buster. And that is probably one of the funniest capers I was ever on in D-Team. And that's precisely why in SWAT, in LAPD SWAT, we should not venture outside the city. Under no circumstances should we ever do that. Anyway, I thought it was pretty funny.